Welcome back to Noosa Mining Virtual. Moving right along, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Mike Young, our next presenter. Mike is the Managing Director of Perth-based resource company, Vimy Resources. Mike joins us from Perth. He is apparently in his garage with his bicycles in his happy place, but you wouldn't know it from the background that we see. Welcome, Mike. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Great to be back in Noosa virtually. I am wearing my Noosa sweater, so at least I'm partly Noosa'd up. Given where the uranium space has gone for the last 2 years since I first presented, I felt like calling this talk Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. And I think as we go through it, you'll probably learn to understand a bit more about that. Why uranium? Well, nuclear power demand is growing. That is undisputed, and production is dropping. And over the last 2 years since we last spoke, the production has come off quite a bit. We'll talk a bit more about that. That's long-term and it's structural, but it has been exacerbated by COVID, and that's now focusing security of supply in the minds of the utilities, and Australia is well placed to provide uranium to these guys moving forward. We have the largest pre-development project in Australia. We have the best land exploration package, I would say, on Earth, certainly in Australia, and we've got an expert team of mine builders. So that makes us a really good investment opportunity. We are about building uranium mines. That differentiates us from about 90% of the pack out there. We've got advanced projects, DFS on Moga rock. That's currently undergoing a refresh, so look forward to some news on that number coming soon. 90 million pound resource, 42 million pound reserve. That will grow as we mine. We've got a 15-year mine life at the moment, but we expect to bring that forward. And we're currently going through our approvals process, and those secondary approvals are coming through. Alligator River up in the Northern Territory. This is a high-grade world-class area. This hosts Jabiluka, Ranger. It's got MacArthur River lookalikes, and we already have a resource up there called Angularly with Tier 1 economics. A little bit about uranium and electricity. Look, nuclear power is absolutely growing and production is dropping. Nuclear fuel cycle, uranium, they use about 180 million pounds a year. As an aside, one container ship can carry 5 years worth of the world's uranium demand. So that's how this thing has huge power density, and you don't need much of it to power 10% of the world's electricity. But security of supply certainly trumps price. So for example, I like this example in terms of pricing. So the difference between $35 now where the price is and $55 where we need it to be is $20. The utilities use 500,000 pounds a year. That's $10 million that they would have to pay extra to get that 55. They create 8 billion kilowatt hours a year. That means that $20 difference is about $0.00125 per kilowatt hour. Price does not matter. These guys are all about security of supply, and I'll talk a bit more about that as we go on. Electricity demand is absolutely tied to GDP. So as electricity use goes up, GDP goes up, and vice versa. And you can see there's a very strong trend there. And global demand, electricity is growing at about 1.5% per annum. Nuclear is following it. And to put it quite bluntly, the IPCC target of 1.5 degrees will not be met without nuclear. Looking at electricity and clean vehicles, have a look at the slide deck online. But what I like about this is that the cleanest cars in the world are in Ontario, and that's because they use nuclear and hydro. Look at that number, emitting very little CO2. EVs are only as clean as the electricity used to charge them. So where's the growth coming from? Well, the growth's coming from China. That's China right there. And that will sustain the growth going forward. We're looking at 2% annual growth. That's almost 50% by 2040. That's a lot of uranium that we need. In terms of supply side, you can see that mines are depleting, and as they deplete, you'll start to see supply go down. This area here, this is called unspecified supply by the WNA, and that basically means that's all the projects in the world where people have an inferred resource. They don't have approvals, they haven't done a DFS. You know, these are really long-term projects that could come online, but currently aren't in the mix, and we see a systemic shortage going forward. Sorry, I'm rushing through this, but I do have only got 14 minutes. So in terms of U.S. purchasing, we have U.S. consumption is dominated by foreign supplies. So you can see here the U.S. sources and foreign sources here. So dominantly by foreign sources. And Australian mining didn't stop during COVID. So obviously the utilities have taken note of that. Sorry, I'm just having a technical issue here. I apologize. Let me go back to, for some reason, my screen has gone off. I'm sorry. There we go. I'm back. And I'm having a hard time moving my slides on. There we go. Sorry about the glitch. And this is uranium, US utility uranium coverage. So you can see this area here is the gap. That's open requirements going out into the 20s. And that gap is basically the opportunity for us to get into the US market. We know for a fact that we have a supply in the US. This is how much uranium has come off since 2003. There's been no Australian closures, but you can see that about over 70 million pounds of uranium has come offline, particularly in the last several years, and particularly because of COVID. So 185 million pounds, 180 million pounds of demand currently, and there's only 120 to 125 million pounds being mined. Uranium price, you can see for several years, it's been in the doldrums. We had a kicker over the last little while. I'll talk a little bit about that. This is commodity performances to date, looking at gold, silver, copper. Copper having a bit of a resurgence there, and gold doing quite well, but uranium's been the standout. And look, uranium's had several catalysts have occurred with uranium. Sorry about that. This is when the pandemic was announced. This was the announcement of the closure of Cigar Lake. This is the announcement by Kazatomprom. And then we had the US Nuclear Fuel Working Group here. And then with the spot price, we always see this. With a lack of catalysts, we start to see it drift. And that's because the spot price is dominated by traders and the utilities are currently not in the market. As I said, demand is growing. Prices need to be above $55 just to sustain the current burn rates of uranium. And they're not there. Prices need to be greater than 65 to encourage new production. So what are the buyers thinking? This is really important. This is, what are the utility guys thinking? Well, they have a recency bias. So for years of low prices and oversupply, they've just been able to get uranium at low prices whenever they've needed to, either on long-term contracts or through carry trade. Really importantly, the fuel that's being burned today was contracted 3 years ago and probably delivered 2 years ago. The nuclear fuel cycle is 2 years. So these guys are burning fuel that they got during the good times. And their inventory levels are still at about 2 years burn rate, which makes them comfortable. So they're not panicking. They're dealing with COVID. They're dealing with the RSA, the Russian Suspension Agreement, Iranian sanctions. The Nuclear Fuel Working Group popped up again overnight when the Americans decided not to give that money to the DOE without more work, and they're refueling. Refueling comes up again just after the summer. Now, this is a really interesting quote. This is from a fuel buyer. When told about prices and what you need to pay to get uranium and the fact that we have shortages, he said this. He said, "We worry about tomorrow's problems when it gets to tomorrow." And as you could see from that previous calculation I did, the difference between 35, where the price is now, and 55, the price that certainly we need as an incentive price, and most of the rest of the world needs, the difference is 0.125 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's why these guys aren't too worried. They've got more things to worry about today. You go to the chief nuclear officer and you say, "I need to buy some fuel." His first reaction will be, "Do we need it today? If we don't, I got other things to worry about." So these guys, they don't think like commodity buyers. They think like guys who are buying lumber to build a house. Just a little bit corporately, look, we've got a good team. Most of you guys know us. If you don't, have a look at the bios here. We've all built mines, very experienced. The important guy in the team here is Scott. He's our marketing guy based in the States. So having him in the States with COVID going on and not being able to travel internationally is really important. And in the words of one uranium analyst, Scott gives me a huge head start. We're cashed up now. We've just done a raise, went very successfully. The uranium price has bumped up. Our share price bumped up a bit, and it has softened a bit. But I'm going to work really hard to get that share price going up. This is our historical share price compared to the uranium price, and you can see from here to here, this block here, basically it followed the uranium price down, and then there was this disconnect, and uranium price going up and the share price going down. Now this isn't this didn't just happen to Vimy. This happened to most of the uranium stocks. I call this market fatigue. It's been a long time. This is 5-6 years ago. It's been a long time in the doldrums, but now we're starting to see significant price spikes. And if you look at where the price was, the last time it was up around $35, our market cap was significantly higher. So, look at this as an opportunity gap. And that's just without mining. Once we build a mine and, you got a mine that's worth $500 million NPV, you'd expect to see the market cap skyrocket over the next few years. And it is about a few years. Uranium is a long-term investment. If you're in it for day trading, look somewhere else, frankly. Projects, we've got the Moga Rock project in Western Australia, just out of Kalgoorlie, down here in the left-hand corner. It's a big project, 90 million pounds, as I discussed, very simple, very robust technically. And as I said, we're revisiting this number with our DFS refresh, something we'd expect to have out in the next few weeks. The Alligator River project in the Northern Territory, this is world-class. The Alligator River Uranium Province is one of the best in the world. It hosts some big mines. It's got Jabiluka Ranger. It's got a lot of targets. We've already got a resource on it. We just have this massive project pipeline that we're going to work on. And this year we expect to be drilling on Southern Flank. The territory is open for exploration. So we hopefully will be getting up there in August and September to do some drilling before the drill season ends. So why uranium? Look, nuclear energy is the best source of electricity in the world. It's got the lowest CO2 emissions, and it is the cheapest and safest power source there is. There is demand growth, as I said, 2% annual compound growth. That means that by 2030, we're going to need an additional 40 million pounds. And frankly, we're going to need two Kazakhstans to match that, because during the 20s, you're just going to see depletion of some big resources like MacArthur River and Cigar Lake. And there's just nothing to fill that gap. There's projects coming on board, absolutely, but there is a supply gap coming. And one thing about uranium that most of you would know that are in the mining industry, it takes a long time to get a uranium project up and running, and we are literally at the front of the queue. Supply shortage, as we've discussed, and why Vimy? Look, we've got one of the most advanced uranium projects in the world. The WNA reported that there are 4 projects under development, 6 planned. That includes Moga Rock. We got an experienced management team and a very experienced uranium team, and that really does put us ahead of the curve. We're in a first world jurisdiction. Western Australia, we do have permission to go ahead, but Australia generally is a good mining jurisdiction. It's got good ESG, and that's really changing against a backdrop that includes Russia, Iran, the Stans, and now China. China's suddenly become a bit of a bad boy. So that puts an Australia in a good spot, particularly given that, the growth is coming out of the non-OECD countries, the Middle East, Japan, Southeast Asia. So we're really well placed to be selling uranium up into those jurisdictions. And we have a significant pipeline of projects. We're targeting over 30 years of supply. We've got the Moga Rock project to kick off with, and then we're looking at the Alligator River project in the Northern Territory with a huge pipeline of projects. Disclaimer, and look a little bit about the resources and reserves. This will be online later today. Look, I'm going to leave it at that. I probably went a bit quicker than you guys expected, but happy to leave it there. And as I said, it'll be online. And if you guys have any questions, certainly come through the conference organizers and send them to me, or you can always get online at info@vimyresources.com.au. So with that, I'll leave it there, and thank you very much.
That was an excellent presentation from Vimy Resources. Thanks so much, Mike. I have no idea how you drew on your slides like that, but it was certainly very impressive. It's amazing what you can do from your garage these days. Visit the contact links under the Vimy Resources company description at noosaminingvirtual.com.au, as I'm sure you have plenty of questions to ask Mike. I did see a few popping through on our presentation there. Taking a quick break now before we're back to hear from New World Resources. Back soon.